Seduction of the Innocent is a book by psychiatrist Frederick Wertham published in 1954. It presented the idea that superhero comic books were causing children to commit crime. To Wertham, superhero comics either taught children to be violent, particularly towards foreigners, and take what they want, or to be submissive and wait for someone strong to solve their problems. It was backed up by research that has since been discovered to be falsified to support Wertham's agenda. His ideas proved popular, enough to cause mass hysteria towards comics, leading to book burnings, bannings, and even official censorship with the creation of the Comics Code Authority, though Wertham had no connection to the code itself. In this video, I'll be using a close reading of a specific issue of the comic title, Daredevil, as an example of why Seduction of the Innocent was wrong about comics and the way the medium affects people. But first, who is Daredevil? Created by Stan Lee and Bill Everett in 1964, Daredevil was a comic about a superhero of the same name, secretly the lawyer Matt Murdock. Since childhood, he had a strong sense of justice, so much so that he risked his life pushing a blind man out of the way of a speeding truck, which led to a radioactive isotope getting knocked loose and blinding him, though in return it gave him enhanced senses that he uses to his advantage as both lawyer Matt Murdock and superhero Daredevil. 1985's Daredevil number 223 by Denny O'Neil, Jim Shooter, and David Mazzucchelli follows the Beyonder, God essentially. He has a goal of making an honest attempt at owning Earth, even though he could, and actually has, simply used his powers to take control of it. Beyonder found that simply taking Earth by force was unsatisfying, and that fulfillment might live in the trying rather than the doing. His new plan? Acquire the legal services of Matt Murdock and try to acquire Earth legitimately. Matt, not fully convinced that this is something he wants to do, dons his costume and decides to look for a stolen camera with sentimental value to his girlfriend. He's shown to be in tune with his surroundings in a way like no other. The narration goes as far as to say he becomes one with his environment, and that at moments like this, his blindness becomes irrelevant. In an effort to convince Matt to help him, Beyonder gives Matt his sight back as a sort of legal retainer. Matt is overjoyed and immediately explores New York, amazed by the simplest things. Although he's kept his enhanced senses, he seems less in tune with his environment than normal, so much so that strangers take notice. Something feels and looks off. Eventually, Matt begins to cry, realizing how much having his sight back means to him, and that perhaps it means too much, to the point where it may be detrimental to the profound sense of justice that interested Beyonder in the first place. Matt understands that this sense of justice must remain even more important than his sense of sight, and demands that Beyonder remove his vision, as Matt will not work for him. Beyonder acknowledges this and agrees to no longer try to use Matt's legal services to control Earth, yet, as a gift, wants to leave Matt with his sight and is declined. Matt knows that keeping this gift is a risk to his morality that he's developed without it, and while he is Daredevil, that's one risk he won't take. Beyonder listens, granting Matt back his blindness, and vanishes. Matt then gets his girlfriend's camera back from the thief who took it, able to understand the beauty of perspective better than he ever has before. A lot of the ways Wertham said that comics are a negative influence are directly flipped on their heads in this issue. It follows a being with unlimited power who understands that power is not everything, and there's a reward in trying. There's very little violence in the issue, and when it happens, its purpose is to punish a man who's harmed an innocent. In Matt's own arc, he learns that the morality he's gained through nearly a lifetime of being blind isn't worth sacrificing in order to see. Together, these elements have a general effect on the readers, motivating them to value their own hard work and personalities as opposed to whatever pure power, especially over others, can do for you. Wertham also wrote about how he felt specific comics affected specific readers, and while I don't have a group of children to lie about, I can talk about my own experiences of being affected by this issue in particular. As a trans woman, I spent a long time wishing that I was cis. I felt like being trans was too dangerous and too much of a hassle. It wasn't until I read stories like this one that I was encouraged to believe that what makes me different is also what makes me beautiful. Both Matt and I have what some may view as inherent problems, but in reality, our experiences with these differences have made us who we are. If we were to magically throw away those differences, we'd also be throwing away ourselves. As I've gotten further along in my transition, some may even feel that I pass as cis, similar to how Daredevil may pass as a sighted person. For the last few months, I chose what I thought was peace, and stopped being as open about my identity as I once was earlier in my transition in order to keep passing. Though I didn't magically become cis for a day, I did spend months hoping people would view me that way. But all I was really doing was silencing this part of my identity that is so important to me, a part of me that deserves to be spoken about. This issue didn't just encourage me to be happy that I was born the way I was, but to keep being open about that and not overlook the beauty that makes me who I am in order to fit in with everyone else. Seduction of the Innocent fails to acknowledge the magic to be found in interpretation. Heroes with such fantastical abilities weren't meant to be viewed through such a superficial and cynical lens like Wortham suggests. A character like Daredevil is so much more than just some violent dude in a costume. He's a character full of humanity that, in stories like this, encourages readers to keep on valuing what makes them human. I'm sure that this issue wasn't written with the intent of some trans girl finding it relatable 40 years later, but it has strong themes of general self-reflection, themes that so many people could be motivated by differently. Daredevil number 223 didn't make me happy with being trans. It just encouraged me to look at what was already within myself in a new light, one of acceptance and joy.